regional talent that we're very blessed to have grace our stage over these 3 days. I've been very fortunate as a UAE resident, as a former journalist for the BBC, now based here, to actually contribute my services and meet so many wonderful people. And today we've got another action-packed schedule for you. Building on the last 2 days, we have now today some really key highlights. Jason Eastreet, world-renowned hacker. I hear that he's robbed 5 continents worth of banks. He's really exciting. He's going to be here for a special presentation at 12:30. And the panel straight afterwards, the second panel of the day, we're looking at the growth of crypto heists. Really exciting, topical stuff. My colleague Nathan Swain, wonderful moderator, is going to be taking you through that. There's a UAE live bug bounty competition. Hands up who's had a chance to have a look at it via halls 6 and 7. Oh, so our attendees haven't had a chance. Nathan has. I haven't had a chance either. I believe it's through halls 6 and 7. It's been launched here at GISEC Global for the first time. It really puts the UAE on the map, a really exciting investment in talent here, and international people coming to contribute their services as well. So please do check it out, but don't tear yourself away from the main stage just yet. What we're going to have in store for us is some really exciting panels, presentations. But to begin with, I'm just going to take a moment to say thank you to the organisers. The third day really is our finale, really special treats ahead for you. The UAE Cybersecurity Council, the Elite Advisory Committee for GISEC Global, they've really pulled out all the best stuff for you. So please join me in giving everybody on the organisers team a big round of applause, please. I know people usually say their thank yous to the end of the day, but I think people need to be thanked throughout. On that note, we now have our stage set for the first wonderful and thought-provoking panel. We're looking at matching up to the hacker's speed. Is it possible? And with a real focus on the financial sector. To take me through this, some world-renowned experts. I'm going to introduce everybody on stage, and then if we can welcome everybody. Hussain Alkhalsan, the Chief Information Security Officer at Zand. Ahmed Zarouni, VP and Head of IT Department, Investment Corporation of Dubai. Ben Halpert, flown in from the States. He's a Chief Information Security Officer for Groupon, amongst many other things. Abhishek Pratap Singh from Oman. He's the Head of Information Security, Governance and Risk, Bank Muscat. And Hamad Musabeh, Director of Information Security at Digital Dubai Authority. Please do join me in welcoming them. And gentlemen, do come over here. Thank you so much. As you all take a seat, just to think back to yesterday, one of the highlights that we had was a panel discussion in the morning, and I was very pleased to be joined by Dr. Marwan, colleague of yours at Digital Dubai Authority. He set out for us a really wonderful context, and I may ask you, Hamad, to begin with this as well. Putting Dubai on the map, when it comes to smart cities, it's really interesting coming from a place like London myself and thinking about a city like that. It's got a lot of legacy issues when it comes to digital transformation. Dubai, the UAE, celebrating its 50th anniversary. It's a wonderful place of innovation, bringing in international partnerships, possibly starting with a blank canvas, if I may. So what would be some of the kind of best practice takeaways that you are looking around the world, and international partnerships that are really at the forefront of your mind, representing Digital Dubai Authority?
Thank you. Pleasure to be here. Hamad Musabeh, I'm from Digital Dubai Authority. Coming back to your question, as Digital Dubai, we try to digitize the user experience to make the citizen and people in UAE and Dubai experience the government services more pleasant, and it addresses most of their needs. A good example of that, how we handled this situation during COVID. That was an interesting challenge. And we leveraged the strategy that was put throughout the years. So coming to the 50th year, These are the things that we leveraged. Prior, His Highness had a strategy of mobile everything, and as we kept going in this journey, we started digitizing everything, and the idea of having paperless as one of our main strategies, and so on. The idea here is using the innovation to improve the life of that digital transformation to everyone. And with that, of course, comes security. So as Digital Dubai, we have Desk with us, and we focus a lot on how to make the citizen life easier, more fluid, and how to make it secure.
And we had a lovely discussion off stage this morning. You emphasised the point, and let's not be modest about this, when it comes to the UN Cyber Index, the UAE has climbed, risen, rocketed right up from position 35 to number 5. What significance does that have when it comes to what you project to international partners and also the position here?
Of course, that's a big achievement, and it's a collaborative effort between all the digital and security entities in the UAE. Now, what does that say? Because these indexes give more confidence to the investors, to people who are in the digital space. These kind of indexes focus on more strategic matters. So whether the government or the country have specific digital policies that look into cyber crime, that look into digital cryptocurrencies and so on. We look at collaboration and how we have bilateral agreements with countries to respond to digital incidents and how to share knowledge about them. Of course, also it covers areas of how the country invests and promotes awareness of security from different sectors, even the education sector, students, government sector, and so on, and how to invest. A good example here is like the bug bounty program. How do you encourage the researchers and everyone to invest in cybersecurity and be part of that ecosystem? This all aspires confidence to anyone who wants to invest in the UAE, especially now. Example, if you go to a country and you do a SWOT analysis, this changed. You are now looking at the cyber scenario of that country and what does it deliver and how will it protect your business. And I believe that with that index, we are giving that signal to everyone that UAE is the right place for you to invest.
Hamad Musabeh, I really appreciate your overview there. It gives us wonderful context. And also the UN Cyber Index is a really good starting point for us because it's that international rubber stamp of transparency and accountability. You mentioned that key word there, confidence. Confidence when it comes to international partnerships and investment, but also confidence of customers. So let's hone in on this. And on this point, I'd like to bring in Hussain Alkhalsan, the Chief Information Security Officer of Zand. Fully digital bank. We're hoping that you'll be launching this year, inshallah. For our international attendees who may be unaware of Zand, give us an overview of your vision, and also when it comes to confidence, how does one convince the customer to partner up, to invest in, to place their money in a fully digital bank?
Thank you. My name is Hussain Alkhalsan. Good question. Again, I think from a banking industry, right? We will be a full-fledged digital bank like corporate and retail. When it comes to trust, I mean, people must be able to trust us in terms of first asking the question: are we regulated by the regulator here? Yes. From UAE Central Bank, we act as in any bank in this country for all banking services, right? At the same time, what we have done and achieved in terms of building the ground up, the whole digital bank is security was the main element in terms of making sure that every customer or potential customer who wants to be, putting their money in are, fully convinced. Because what we did is we tried to make sure that, security is embedded in each and every process, each and every step that we do, and at the same time making sure that, we fully have visibility on what's happening on the cloud. So we will be fully on the cloud, definitely. That's the whole purpose of being a digital bank, very flexible, very agile, very resilient, and providing the services anywhere, anytime. And in my view, the other banks have done the first step for us to be trusted again. I mean, people are now trusting other banks to open their accounts virtually, not being there as a presence. And I think everyone is now working towards that. No one would like to visit a branch, let's be honest and fair, I mean, including me, right? I have something to do, I want to pick up my phone and do the transaction while I'm sitting anywhere, anytime. And yeah, that's what we will be able to do and make sure our customers' life are very easy when it comes to banking.
I think that's a really good insight, and to pick up on the point about, you mentioned the lessons can be learned from other banks who are setting this example, who've gone ahead of you. I'm going to bring in Ben Halpert now, Chief Information Security Officer, Groupon. Before Groupon, you were of course working for a startup, going from financial services and moving into thinking about security when it comes to e-commerce. Our wonderful Hussain there mentioned lessons learned. Give us a perspective, an American perspective, on the lessons learned.
So in the United States, so I was with a startup, and the startup served the financial services industry, and so our customers were the largest banks in the world, and we were forced to, because we wanted to do business with the banks, to meet every requirement that the banks were required to meet from all the United States and the SEC and the FDIC regulators. And so that's very, very interesting for a technology startup to have to meet thousands, literally thousands and thousands of requirements from a security perspective. And then, you have to map them to your controls and how you're gonna do that from a technology product perspective. So people that aren't in the financial industry, aren't in the financial services sector, they don't really understand how much security there is within the system, within the banking system globally. And so that's why I thought I'd mention, how many requirements there actually are to do business with banking. And, I joined Groupon about 6 months ago, and for me it was just to do something a little bit different. And the difference between an e-commerce company and a startup that's serving the financial services industry, as an example, or another type of regulated industry like healthcare or defense or something like that, is that you have much less regulation, right? So e-commerce companies, if you want to take credit cards from Visa and MasterCard, you have to be PCI compliant. That's pretty much it. And PCI is very, very light when it comes to security. So, it's incumbent on the security leadership at every organization that's not as highly regulated as the banking industry or financial services industry to actually think about what it is they're protecting and how they can best actually build threat models against it and actually protect information without someone telling you, hey, go do these 2,800 things to protect data.
I think that's a really good insight for us, and it gives me a chance to bring in Abhishek Pratap Singh now, Head of Information Security Governance and Risk Bank Manager, Oman. Abhishek, ahead of today's panel, we were talking about this idea, bridging on from what Ben's introduced, banking on the lessons learned. Let's identify some of the threats. Let's go in, hone in on them. Let's delve into matching up to the hacker's speed. When it comes to some of the considerations yourself and the bank thinks of, what is it? Let's outline those threats and let's think about some of the solutions.
Thank you very much for the question. I will not use the fancy words because everyone is after like zero trust and SASE and all those things. Being a leading bank in Oman, and I work with other banks in the region as well. So threat intel is very important, and it should be relevant and it should be comprehensive so that you can act on it timely. That is what I have seen because I work with SOC and then I have reached up to that level. Many times we are getting intel from different sources which are not relevant. So you have to check like whether why you are being targeted, whether you are in a particular region, particular industry, or you are using a technology which is increasing your threat landscape. So that is one thing which I learned. Then when it comes to vulnerability management, that's the pain area for all the banks, because you cannot bring down your system every other day. IT team, they are crying like, I have patched the system, you have to restart. Unless you restart, vulnerabilities will not go off. But from customer perspective, I'm also an end customer. If channels are not available, I will easily switch to another bank. So matching customer expectation, that is a bigger challenge. From cybersecurity point of view, we are enabling banks to achieve their business goals. But when it comes to zero-day vulnerabilities and all those things, at the time you have to rely on threat intel. So these are the two inputs from my side.
And you were mentioning about this idea, if I may stay with you, Abhishek, about how one survives. There's a particular model that you wanted to outline that you've been working on.
Yeah, so one of my panelists, they highlighted about risk appetite and all this. From business point of view, it's very easy to quantify, okay, what is my risk appetite? But I would like to ask everyone, can you quantify cyber risk appetite? What we have done, we talked about the cyber insurance, how much cyber insurance we have taken. And when it comes to a state-sponsored attack, when they have access to unlimited resources, you cannot do anything. But what best you can do, you can step up your security posture, like WAF and all those things which you are using currently. When it comes to threat intel, you can train your team to react in time, because if you are not reacting in time, means you are already being defeated. And when it comes to lesson learned, another point I would like to highlight, insider threat, because many times banks are just targeting perimeter security. Everyone is investing is step up your firewall, WAF and everything, IPS. But what about insider threat? So banks now they have realized they are also looking at, because whenever any APT is happening, hackers are already inside, and then they try to target your system, which may cause you huge financial losses. So that could be another lesson learned, which I have seen in my experience.
Thank you for that analysis, and also for giving a very international context there to the lessons learned. Ahmed Zarouni, VP and Head of IT Department, Investment Corporation of Dubai. You've been waiting very patiently, thank you. I'm going to come to you now. For our international attendees, because I want to make sure that we've got wonderful UAE representatives here, regional and international representatives. Investment Corporation of Dubai, give us an overview of what it is that you're focusing on, and let's then be more particular, cyber security threats. What are you honing in on?
And I think that is a counter question. Well, to talk about the Investment Corporation of Dubai, just a summary, it's the investment arm of the Dubai government. And we look into many government-related investments, including national and international giant companies. I don't think I'm in the right position to talk about our investments. That is not my domain. Although I know a lot of answers, but I don't think that is my domain. But if you want, I can elaborate more on the answers and beautiful answers that we got from our colleagues here on the stage. I think I would like just to comment on the banking side. From the insider threats, I think there is a growing number of data leakage from the banking sectors, and I think us as a consumer, we are facing this threat, and this is unfortunately is going on. You guys need to tie your shoes. All right. So I think there is a lot of risk factor, and there is a lot of vulnerabilities in the security domain. But to be honest with you, there is two major threats that is always the in the dilemma of the security. Fortunately, the first one is the misinformed leaderships. There's a lot of leaderships still till today, believe it or not, they don't recognize security is something important. And unfortunately, I've seen thousands of organizations Still today, they don't have a single resource dedicated for information security. This is really a big problem. And I think we in the security industry, I think this is something we need to highlight and to make a very bold decision that this is really a big mistake. Having a security...
To just clarify, you're saying thousands of companies here in the UAE?
Worldwide.
Yes.
Yeah.
So they just don't really have the investment, they don't have that role, they don't have a dedicated role.
Yes, there is no dedicated role in terms of information security, and also missing the concepts of why security is important. And this is really a big threat. The other part is of course, all of us agree, is the misinformed users. So people were always the weakest link in security. But I think what makes it much worse is the security absent from the leaderships of some organizations.
I think that's a really intriguing point that you make, because often when we sit in these types of events and we're surrounded by professionals who are top of their game, cybersecurity, information officers, IT, digital specialists, we can almost think that the world is actually replicated here. But you make a very interesting point that this is not happening out there. How does the message get?
I can confirm to you now, all of us here as a security guys, we all agree in this point.
That you all, sorry, say that again?
We all agree at this point that leaders are really missing the point that security is very important. Yes.
And that brings me nicely back to Hamad Musabeh, Director of Information Security, Digital Dubai Authority. We were speaking about this earlier. I'm going to let you say in your words the gap between identifying, the innovation and the security teams.
Here, just a question to the crowd here. Just who's from not security? Who's not security from? Two guys. Raise your hands, don't be shy. That your security colleague next to you will not bite your door. So the majority here are security guys. Let's talk about where do you get inspired to look for the next threat or next attack that might impact your organization. So this is something that you need to embed in your ecosystem, in your organization DNA. So I was having a chat with my colleague. We went to the Future Museum recently. We went as a team. And sometimes when you go with your organizations, I was with our CEO and different people. So everyone looks at the future and they are very positive about it. They see new technologies and so on. But when you're in this field for such a long time, you develop a habit of looking at the security aspect. So, example, if you see someone using a VR or a metaverse, people say, "Oh, this might be a new potential for new ideas, new businesses." I'm looking at it and say, that's a place where social engineering will become a new thing, and it will be like a remote social engineering to a person. So. What I like to say is, innovation is the #1 target of many of the new attacks of the hackers, and they are ahead of us. They go there, they see opportunity. Traditionally, in an organization, the innovation team will look at the security team as a blocker. They will avoid them, and the security team will see it as an extra task. So you need to gel that, because your security team getting involved with the innovation is they're getting involved with the new attacks, understanding what will be exposed to. So it's very important to seek out and look at new innovations, whether it's metaverse. Many of the guys here, I'm not sure if you tried it. Maybe we will dismiss it to say, you know what, this is something, social media. But did you think of the security aspect and what could it open to us as an attack? Other innovations that are coming soon. Example, autonomous. So autonomous cars, autonomous boats, autonomous drones. These are all technologies that we aspire to use because we are in a country or other countries want to use these technologies to simplify. A good example, during COVID, China wanted to use some of the autonomous cars to distribute medicine. So that's very interesting. There's a good use case there. But what are the threats on these technologies? Can someone compromise them? Can someone influence the decision here? these are the next wave of attacks that are coming because we are evolving in that direction. Many of the cities are leveraging these technologies, moving on. New services, think of the Starlink as a technology. I was thinking of this situation. I think they deployed on top of Ukraine and then it was denial of service attack. But it wasn't in the traditional way, they jammed their signals. So as a Starlink operator, the new wave of attack is not on the ground, it's in the space. People are jamming your signal and they're disturbing your service. So there's a new wave of services coming and they will be exposed to the attacks we see on a day-to-day basis, but they need to map it. And the sooner we integrate with the innovation team, the better and the more ready we'll be and we'll be ahead of these attacks.
And to hone in on that point that you make, that when we look at organisations, this kind of conflict with a small c between teams, is it a legacy issue? Is there a misunderstanding? Ahmed Zarouni was there talking about companies not even having this role, but what do you think it is? Why do you think there is this kind of tension?
It's natural. It's everywhere. It's just
it is everywhere.
At a leadership level, if it's embedded in the system. So, example, in the UAE we have AI and we have all these concepts and all the teams put around it. So, and the security is embedded within, and they introduce security at the earliest stage because there is that understanding. Now, at different sectors, it depends. If you're in a very competitive sector and it's commercial and want to reach the market as fast as possible, they will tend to see the security as a blocker. But at the government level, no, we see them as an enabler because you're trying to push confidence. The number one aspect that maybe measures the success is the adaptation of the end user to your government services. And the more they adapt means they have that confidence, and that has to be embedded in them. So the sooner you embed, the more confident the end user will be. And I think that's a success criteria.
Well, I think what you're saying, Hamad, there is going to be music to the ears of our security professionals, that they should be seen as enablers and not thwarters of innovation. So that is a point that we will be taking away. I'm going to bring in Ben Halpert again now, because of course we mentioned that you moved from startup to e-commerce. Very much what Hamad was talking about there, about the teams, the roles. Yesterday, it brings to mind, Eris Jacobson from Israel gave a wonderful presentation. There was something that really struck me. He said, adversaries don't work in silos, organizations do. Expand.
So, when you think about all the companies that are out there, and I completely agree with all the panelists here, most companies don't have a dedicated individual focused on security. So if you look at the Colonial Pipeline attack in the United States, they're moving, oil in our country, and they did not have a dedicated information security professional. They have one now. So that's the problem. And the problem is that the people who fund businesses and the people that are focused on making the next quarterly number, so the stock of the company goes up, are thinking very short term. So they're saying, well, what could, the marketing department or the engineering department or the research and development department, what can they do within the next sprints or, within the next few months, as opposed to, we need to step back, we need to make sure everything we do is in a secure manner, and we need to make sure that security is involved in all of it, because that will actually pay dividends further down the line and will show up later. And so, it's also, on the consumer side, consumers also need to be educated about the limits of the technology. So, we have AI. AI is developed by humans. Humans are flawed, therefore AI is flawed. That's just how it is. But from a consumer perspective, the marketing that they push out there is that, AI will make decisions for you. Well, it's not going to make the decision the way you think it's going to make the decision. And so it cuts across every industry that we use, like AI as an example. But then you can also think about cars that drive themselves. Yes, you can sit in a car that drives itself. Some people have died because a car was driving themselves and they weren't paying attention. They relied on the technology in the car to not hit something. But again, technology is developed by humans. Humans are flawed, therefore what is developed is flawed. So you can't 100% rely that that car is going to get you there safely. You have to still be there, which is why we have pilots in a cockpit, even though the planes they fly today take off themselves, they can land themselves, they can fly themselves. The pilots are there for that one time in 25 years when something goes wrong and they have to take over in the aircraft. So same kind of thing needs to happen from a further education. But the technology companies don't like to talk about that because they're trying to sell the products.
So that brings me nicely back to Zand representative. I had the pleasure of interviewing your CEO at GISEC in October here in Dubai, here actually in this very same building. Hussain, Alkhalsan, the Chief Information Security Officer, fully digital bank, to be launched this year. Ben outlined humans as being flawed, the problem in the whole COG. Consumers to be educated about the limits. I mean, your possible threat level in terms of being a fully digital bank is that much greater. How does one instill that type of confidence and trust? I know we talked about this earlier, but to bridge on from what Ben was speaking about there.
So first, maybe if you allow me to comment on my colleagues here, and
So
I think
just bring the mic really up.
Yeah.
Yes.
So just to comment on my colleagues over here on a couple of points, right? And they are, I think, spot on many aspects. I think there is a major chunk of our responsibility and role, which is called education, right? So education is, in all angles. It's upstream, downstream, left, right. So we need to educate our leadership. We need to educate our employees. We need to educate our customers. We need to educate our partners as well, right? So talking about the importance, and again, how important is cybersecurity, and spot on again, there are leadership who don't recognize that, and I always like to say, and again, my colleague mentioned a car, and I like this analogy always to keep saying that cybersecurity in an organization is like a brake in a car. Now, if you think that the brake was invented to stop the car, I disagree with that, because I believe the brake was invented in a car to make the car speed as fast as possible. So in an organization, if you have a good brake, you can speed as much as you can, right? So now, thinking about this, how many of you asked about a brake when you go and purchase a car? Maybe none, right? So this is one of the things that we need to kind of understand and educate people around us in terms of how important that is, because you could be agile and flexible. Yes, you could use the brake to stop the car. You could, right? But you could also make sure that you can speed and you can pull that trigger or hold on the brake whenever you need to. So you're flexible, you're agile, you can press a little bit, you can go more until you reach your objective. But that's how it shows the importance. And again, back to your question, right? Because of course would have a lot of concerns, and as we speak, we always say that, simple example, I mean, we all receive these calls about, scammers trying to tell you, oh, I'm calling from your bank, try to, give me your SMS OTP, and then, fraud you and all this kind of stuff. So again, I mean, there's a lot of definitely room for improvement when it comes to how do I do my digital authentication, how do I verify my customer, how do I verify transactions, and so on and so forth. I don't want to deep dive into this, but it is a whole different innovation in these areas where AI and machine learning have been, taking precedence in terms of analyzing the customer behavior, the way people hold their phone, the location they do the transaction with, and so on and so forth. So So yeah, I mean, there is a lot of technology dependency on this to ensure that these basics are even caught up in this basic criminal, I would say, activities that are happening around.
I really like the way there you managed to talk about the internal education and the external education. I think that's really important, so we don't lose track when we are speaking amongst ourselves of the customer. Yesterday we had a wonderful panel looking at thwarting hackers when it comes to the healthcare industry. The patient and the health professional is really there at the heart of this. So it's a case of how the technology and the cybersecurity enables these particular industries to excel. So I think that was a really astute point you made. Abhishek, I see that you've been nodding vigorously at the end and patiently waiting. My panelists are so well behaved, aren't they? They're not even interrupting, which you're free to do. Abhishek Singh, here with Bank Muscat, Oman. You were nodding. I'm going to allow you to add your point.
Yeah, so the panelists, they have highlighted very good points.
Sorry, if you can bring the mic really close.
Yeah, so when we talk about changing, like everyone is excited about new technology and all, and what trend I have seen, many banks, they have changed their way of working. Internally, they had divided their resources into run the bank and change the bank. So running like whatever existing technology and services which we are offering, whether they are delivered in a secure manner, that's the objective. When we talk about, let's say 80% is dedicated for it, 20% they have dedicated for innovation. Let's say new technology, AI, everyone is after that, chatbots after that, metaverse. JP Morgan just launched, they want to do first in the metaverse, so customer experience they want to enhance, they are into it. Now, again, a trending word like open banking, where you have to share your information with your third parties. Okay, but no one wants to end up in a situation where you will get fines from regulatory bodies and all those things. So one proposal, like even I made to my board as well, in cybersecurity, everyone is doing their day-to-day job, like monitoring, acting on it, closing vulnerabilities, and at end of the day, closing the ticket, and we are secure. Similarly, like in business, we are paying attention for innovation. In cybersecurity, there is a high need, it's a need of the hour. Like you have to create your innovation unit, which will just focus on emerging risk. If you are bringing a metaverse in your environment, what will be the risk and how you can address it? Accordingly, you can spend. Like my colleague, he mentioned about brake and car concept. So it's all about risk and control. So yeah, I don't want business to stop just because something is risky. However, all steps should be risk aware. Like to what extent we can take a risk. Without taking risk, you cannot grow as a business. So you have to take the risk. But as a cybersecurity team, if we have dedicated innovation unit in place, they can take care of those things proactively. So that's my point.
I think that's a really important point to make, about changing the way of working. Emphasises a lot what our panelists have been speaking about. We've got a few more minutes. I'm going to open it up to the audience. If anybody has a question to put to our illustrious lineup, please do go to the mic stand, introduce yourself, name and company, let's get to know who's here attending, and direct your question, if that's okay with my panelists, to...
Hi everyone, I am Arshad Patan from Technowal Information System from Saudi Arabia. I have one question. I have little disagreement and agreement with the break and those things. Because management and everybody think that information security is a break wherein we stop for operation team or DevOps team. But I personally believe that we are like caution buttons, wherein in roads we will see signs, right, up and down, you need to take right, left and those things. I personally feel that we are doing some kind of same job. We have the caution button wherein we put controls in order to show our team that you have to slow down here, you have to take the fast here, here 140 you can go, it's safe. here you can take 10, it's the same. That's how we ensure that cybersecurity team work together with operational team in order to speed up as well as vary with stock and make sure them they are taking the right direction in order to achieve their objectives.
I think that's a really valuable contribution. Thank you very much for that. Is there a point that the panelists want to add to what the gentleman has added there? Anybody wants to?
Maybe a question to the gentleman. Are you involved with the operation team? Yes. Are you involved with the innovation team? Can you give us something on that?
Cybersecurity team actually.
Are you involved with your innovation team? Do you have like a team that comes with new ideas, new services? And how is the security team involved with them? I'm just curious.
We have development separate team and R&D. I work closely with them in order to ensure that what is the risk and what is the controls in order to take achieve their objectives.
Few points. I just want to separate two things. It's the daily operation. How do we look at new threats that might be coming? When the internet was first formed, there were building blocks. So if you think as DNS, IP, and all that, they were the building blocks of the internet, and this is what was targeted. We need to start thinking of what are the building blocks of the next generation of services coming to the cyberspace. Whether it's an identity management solution, which most of the banking sectors will heavily rely on. And the attacks there will be more focused towards facial recognition, liveness test. And if you can break something like that, then now you're disrupting a building block. Similarly, AI, the gentleman also talked about AI. And AI is a building block of many technologies, whether it's used in the health sector, whether it's used in the automotive sector. And that building block is depending on AI, machine learning, and if you can find an attack in one of these ML algorithms and you can influence it to do something, now you're attacking a whole range of services. So we need to keep an eye on what are the new building blocks of the next generation services, what are the attacks there, because the next wave of attacks will target these similarly from history, what was targeting our PKI infrastructure, our DNS, our IDs. Did we sort these issues out? Kind of. Kind of. But are we ready to sort out the new issues? Especially that innovation will not stop. We need to be an enabler, we need to embrace it, and we need to find a way to coexist together and deliver that across. So I'm trying to open your eyes or open your horizon to areas that you might consider a source of a threat. Don't think of it this way. Think of it as an opportunity to secure. So the more you're involved in these things, the better you will secure your next generation services that your business will bring to your attention.
I think you certainly are opening our eyes, and that's a really valuable interaction that we've had with our attendee. I'm afraid we're not going to have time for any more questions from the audience, but Abhishek, I saw you nodding vigorously, so I'm just going to let you add a point, and then I'm going to give one last question to each of our panelists as a little takeaway before we go. So Abhishek?
Yeah, so just to add to what Michael mentioned, risk and control.
Again, sorry, the mic close to you.
Yeah. So it's not all about cyber risk. You have to understand your business risk as well, because you are the business enabler end of the day. So anything like business needs to decide like whether they want to go forward or backward. But if you have this understanding, then you will be in a state to convince your business decision maker to raise fund or sponsorship or particular country. So it's always good to understand, because in order to understand business, I moved from security to audit, where we have more access to the business, and then again move back to security. So that gives you overall perspective. Most of the time, we use technical language, which no one likes in a business unit. Okay, and we are not able to give them sense of comfort. Why I should spend for it? If I just want to sell off this bottle to you, okay, I need to create demand. Okay, so that should be the logic behind it. Unless you pick up your business terms, business risk to demonstrate why you need this control, why you want someone to invest in that, you won't be able to sell off.
I think that's a really, it's a really significant point you make in terms of like creating demand, and also it's a valuable kind of piece of advice. It's interesting that we're sitting here in 2022 and that still needs to be said, considering the level of cybercrime and cyber attacks out there. On that point, let's look into our crystal balls, if I may. I mean, the pandemic probably makes us think we shouldn't project into the future. Let's just, indulge in a bit of future gazing. A last takeaway from each of our panelists, if we had to project, let's not say 5 years, because it's way too far in the future. Pandemic makes me think, let's just think 1 year in advance. What should we be anticipating? Because this is such a fast-moving industry, especially the financial sector. If I may, please begin with you, Hamad Musabeh, our Digital Dubai Authority representative here.
As I mentioned, we need to focus on these building blocks. They will be the enabler of the new wave of services. I think COVID was an accelerator to many of these services, and they became a reality. So to be able to offer services for a digital platform is an opportunity, is a business opportunity, but it's at the same time a risk. And we need to really look and assess what are the risks in that segment. Another thing that we need to think of is how to keep up with these new technologies from analysis/forensics. That's a growing challenge, and that's something we need to really pay attention to. So, example, if today you need to do some forensic analysis on an iPhone, it's a challenge. Now imagine doing a forensic analysis on a Tesla car to figure out was it the AI mistake or the driver mistake for the accident. These challenges will come in the future. How are we able to do forensic analysis on these technologies? How are you going to do forensic analysis in AI and IoT and other emerging technologies? And is it a challenge today, and will it be a challenge, a bigger challenge in the future? Yes. So I think an attention in that sector will be very important, because forensic is used to look at things post-mortem. So if there's an incident or the new attack happened, you will see it post-mortem and you need to analyze it. And I think that's an area that needs attention in the near future.
I think that brings us really nicely on to introducing our Zand gentleman again. If we have to do some future gazing, and hopefully it involves Zand launching. Hussain, Alkhalsan, what would you say are some of the big threats that we should be aware of going into the future?
There are many, actually.
I think we need another hour. As a quick takeaway.
Yeah, I think the point is, a takeaway for me is, and for everyone is, I think the cybersecurity need to play a very proactive role rather than reactive way. I think we have been seeing that, in many occasions, the cybersecurity is being playing the reactive role. It's like you wait until someone comes to you to get you involved, but rather you need to be proactive, outgoing to ensure that you are involved. Because the main reason I'm saying this, cybersecurity is becoming a very unique competitive advantage kind of aspect, whether it is for the country or for an organization. For the country, it means better economy and more business, right? And for an organization, it's same, better business, resiliency and agility as well. So I would say this is the takeaway. If we talk about threats, of course, it's evolving. In my view, the takeaway is to ensure that, in any organization, we need to follow basics. It's very often that we miss the basic control, or we miss the basic requirement, or we miss the basic visibility, or we miss the basic mistake because a proper review was not done. So it's very obvious things that we need to make sure that we really bang on again and again and again until we get it right.
I think that's a really important point. I'm just going to skip ahead and bring in Ahmed Zarouni, Investment Corporation of Dubai, because you have been waiting patiently. Your takeaway, and just to bring in something that Hamad and I were talking about off stage, Dubai government going paperless, incredible achievement. It was announced at GISEC last year. Very excited to be part of that presentation. Future gazing, paperless. but future gazing, what would you say is like one key takeaway in terms of a threat that we should in this room be thinking about?
I think instead of keep thinking about the threats and vulnerabilities, which is very obvious, we should really think on how to mitigate that risk by involving the security team in the decisions. So enabling them to be part of the decision to acquire a software or build the software or even use the software, even if it was from well-known companies worldwide. And even if we are going to manufacture something, involving the security team from the day one, it's as if we have a house covered with a ceiling. Without that, the house will never have a ceiling.
I think that's a really important analogy. So from our UAE representatives, the talent that we have represented regionally, Abhishek, and then I'm going to come to you, just very quickly, a one-line takeaway, if I may.
I think the future would be, when it comes to threat, that would be an identity threat. We talk about paperless and everything. So if your identity, digital identity is lost, you will lose everything. Be it access to your bank account, be it access to your home, because we are going for smart homes and all. So where we have to pay more attention. So as an individual, like I am Abhishek, so I need to prove that thing again and again. And people are going for seamless options, like okay, I'm wearing a band, or maybe my digital identity is stored in the cloud, which is compromised. So once that is gone, everything's gone.
And so now Ben Halpert, Groupon, you're going to be our international representative representing the world with your takeaway. No pressure there. You know what, I've just been really impressed throughout the whole programming for 3 whole days. We've got such a breadth of international, regional and local talent and expertise and experience. No pressure, Ben. If we had to do an international takeaway, what is it?
So from an international perspective, I think we all need to understand, and I think everyone up here will agree, is that the threats and the threat actors don't change over time. Technology changes over time. And so if we're building technology, the sooner we can get with the engineers, the developers, the product designers, the hardware, software, whatever it is, the better, so we can actually build a secure future. And also from that aspect, we talked about educating the users. And so it doesn't matter what language you speak, it doesn't matter where you live. A user is a user of a product or a solution. We have to make things easier for them. We have to teach users about what they can do to help themselves, which is one of the reasons why I started the nonprofit Savvy Cyber Kids, to start teaching kids at 3 years old about security and privacy and technology balance. Because if we can teach the world's youth, starting at 3 years old, to make smart decisions, they'll be better for us when they come into the workforce, because they will help us identify new threat vectors that are coming in from the same threats that we all will continue to face.
And Ben, I really enjoyed our special interview that we had on Monday talking about this, because of course you work in the area of cyberbullying and educating digital natives, so to speak. Hamad, did you want to add anything? Okay. Thank you so much, gentlemen. We could, of course, talk for many, many hours. Please do catch them while you are here. Everybody's very friendly and approachable. I'm going to say thank you to you all, and I'm going to give a brief introduction to our next panel, because we just dived straight into the next exciting topic. But for now, thank you for talking us through all of this, sharing your international and regional experience with us. Thank you very much. And while I allow my panelists to leave the stage, I shall now be introducing the next panel. I'm handing over to a very